Well, we're excited to be here with another Leadership Bits and Bytes. And Chris, I really thank you for coming in. We're with Chris Bennett from Genesis Nonprofit Housing. Tell us, what does Genesis do?
So Genesis, and thanks Rhoda, thanks for having me. Genesis was established in 1998 by three other nonprofits in West Michigan. Had Dwelling Place of Grand Rapids, ICCF, and Hope Network. And Genesis was established to address permanent supportive housing specifically. And this is back when, now these days, when you look at affordable housing development with the low-income housing tax credit program through the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, permanent supportive housing is one tier of development in the affordable housing arena that a lot of developers go after. At the time, is something that Genesis was specifically created to address. And so it was a member organization until very recently, within the last, I believe it was the last 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, when it was changed to a directorship and fully separated from the three organizations that helped create it. So we're kind of a small, big organization. We have 370 apartments, 9 different properties, but we have 4 staff employed by Genesis. There's myself and 3 other full-time staff, and there are resident service coordinators. Okay. So our primary responsibility as an organization is to develop affordable housing, maintain that affordable housing, and then assist our residents to make sure they're successful in maintaining, the terms of their lease, or identifying different support services they might need to thrive in their housing. That could be, financial education services, or some kind of wellness provider, or mental health. There's a very broad gamut, and that's something where I'm scraping the surface of what all of these different services that my staff provide our residents in my 6 months here so far. It's remarkable, honestly, the support they provide residents in our housing that need it. So
that's exciting. It has to be challenging when you think about the scope of needs that people come with and need to have that successful residence for them. And every one of them is probably a bit unique or different, I would think.
Yeah, and the life context can vary so wildly in experience from one person to another. And when you see, we house a lot of households that have a disability or have experienced homelessness, and that can be an umbrella with a lot of different smaller categories underneath it. So I think it takes a lot to understand the background and the issues someone might be having, or just the general help or assistance that they need or don't need.
Right.
So.
And I would imagine a large part of that is also maybe helping to connect them to resources in the community that they might not be aware of that can also help support them. Is
Yes,
that accurate?
That is very true. We work one of the partnerships I've become aware of recently. We're working with Care Resources, PACE, and they provide a huge gamut of services themselves at 2 or 3 different locations for seniors or household people with disability, and we partner with them on a couple of our properties, both in getting housing needs addressed. So if they have people that are looking for housing, we've been successful in partnering with them to get referrals in and address that. But there's strength in that venture together, because they will come and they will transport our residents to their facilities where they can get some benefit from their programs. So
that's great.
That's just one example. It's really just understanding what is available in the community, what you can connect people to, either directly or just indirectly, just to make sure that they know what tools are available to them to help them through their daily life. So.
Yeah. I'm sure that's a huge hurdle for many people, because West Michigan, we're very fortunate. We have a lot of philanthropic kinds of efforts, but it can be a little bit of a maze if you're not familiar with how to navigate all of that. So it's great that you're providing that. Tell me a little bit about what excites you about this work. Sounds pretty complicated. I know there's a lot of technical skill that goes into navigating affordable housing.
Right.
What excites you and gets you up in the morning?
I've always, I think, personally responded to mission focused work as a path, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all have to work to provide for ourselves and families, but I think I've responded much more in terms of as far as motivation goes. If I'm working in an area where there's mission focus that you can see, and sometimes you don't see the results of that work immediately. It takes time, but for me, that's always kind of been something I've really looked at as a plus. So, and at Genesis, like I said, it's this interesting kind of dynamic where we're small in staff, but we have a fairly large range of properties and apartments and townhomes that we provide to people. So, it's an interesting dynamic because it feels a little bit on the entrepreneurial side in some ways, but you still have different elements of the larger organization that you have to be mindful of at the same time.
I'm curious, as you think about housing, we hear all the time about how tight the housing market is, and especially as prices have gone up, the housing values, which is great if you're currently in the housing market already. If you're not, it can really be a huge hurdle. And so do you feel like there's been a equal increase in the need for affordable housing because of where the current housing market is?
Yes. Short answer is yes. There is one measurement that has been kind of used in conversation around the state lately, and that's the ALICE metric, and that is asset limited, income constrained, and employed. So that means people who are working but can't afford to really achieve what they need to achieve, and that could be getting an apartment, buying a house. That could be a situation where if the timing belt goes out on your car, all of a sudden you're at risk of losing your job because you can get to work, and then that income goes away. So it's a fragility metric, really, as much as I understand it. And the really concerning number to me is 40% of households in Michigan fall under that ALICE threshold. The water level is going up on so many people in our state, and West Michigan is no exception. And it's a need that it just requires more intent. It requires more investment from local, state, federal governments to help address. The idea that you can just build more to correct the problem. More housing is needed. Every type of housing is needed to address it, but the other side that I think we're slower to really discuss is what's happening just to our basic levels of income that people are making too. Because that's a harder conversation.
Yes.
That's not something I think we're really equipped in general right now to really focus on as much as just saying, well, let's just change the zoning. Let's just change, a couple different things and just build more. It's a good approach, but I think holistically, if you're not talking about the disparity in income, you're not really looking to it. You're not looking at the whole picture, I think.
Those bigger, deeper discussions that as a community we need to have. And I'm sure your expertise in leading the organization really is helping the organization to have a voice and to provide some leadership within the community for that.
It's actually something I'm trying to sharpen myself right now. I've been at Genesis for a little over 6 months now, and I've gotten a better orientation on. My predecessor John Weinbeek led Genesis for 19 years through some very difficult times, and had to make some big changes to correct some issues that came up just outside of anyone's control. And so I come aboard at a time where that correction was made, and now moving forward, just trying to maintain that momentum. And now I'm looking out at other community members, other advocacy groups, and trying to figure out where can I be more of service, where can I help propel the voice that's already out there to make sure that we're advocating as much as we need to be. So.
Oh, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about leadership and I think leadership is one of those topics that and areas that happens both within the organization as well as you were saying outside within the community. I'm curious, describe a little bit, maybe if you would, about your philosophy about, or your approach to leadership. How did you handle that transition? Because you go from someone who's been here for 19 years,
Yeah.
has all of these long-term relationships, and now you come in and that's quite an adjustment for people.
It is. And I think, I think just getting to know who you're working with first and just being very honest about what your own intents are, what just not being afraid to ask questions.
Right.
My predecessor, John Weinbeek, was very gracious in providing some extra time where we worked together and helped make that transition happen.
Mm-hmm.
The Genesis board is a fantastic group of just absolute giants in their own experience in affordable housing. And I think, I've known some folks that I work with now. I've known them for quite some time in my previous life in other areas too. So that always helps.
Yeah.
My general approach is just try to operate with a good amount of integrity, which is not always easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to admit if you've made a mistake and then work to correct it, because that's the only way we really learn from anything.
Right.
And that's what I really expect from the people that work with me too. Just and it's a funny thing too, because I think in general we've become fairly risk adverse in a lot of areas where we don't want to admit when something happens that didn't work out, that we missed something, and sometimes there's a very good reason for that, but
right.
I think if we're operating with an amount of grace and just empathy in the work that we do, and able to not celebrate mistakes. I've never been comfortable with that notion that we can celebrate a mistake, because a mistake is something that we shouldn't. Right. It's not the outcome we were going for. Right. But just acknowledge that the mistake happened, and then try to figure out, okay, what was learned from this. Right. I've always been the person that myself I learned from banging my head against the keyboard till I figure something out historically. You know what I mean? It's just it's a difficult way to learn sometimes, but I think it gives the most meaning to understanding what you're really doing. Mm-hmm. So giving people room to take a risk and make a mistake and learn from it is something I've learned over the years. Is something that you have to give room for. Yeah,
we all need those joint voices and experiences and expertise to come together to have the best solution for our community.
Absolutely.
To think that any one organization can do it all, especially in an area as complex as affordable housing, just would not be real. Mm-hmm. So it definitely is a joint venture. And I find it fascinating that it was that kind of collaboration that really birthed Genesis way back, and it continues on today in a very healthy way to have that mission within the community.
Yeah. It's an interesting history going back to like the founding of the organization and what it was intended for. You look down the road over the years, and everything adjusts. If you're being too rigid, you're going to miss something. You have to be flexible. You have to have enough understanding of what's around you to make adjustments as you need to. But I mean, the core principle of Genesis, since its inception, hasn't really changed in a highly fundamental way. We serve our primary housing portfolio is senior housing, but we have a large amount of apartments and townhomes that serve households that have a disability or that have experienced homelessness. And I think going forward, that we're going to stay true to that focus, but also trying to meet the needs of other areas of housing and communities as we can identify them. So being fleet of foot can be difficult. You're gonna miss something. It's just part of being human, but just trying to be open-minded and take an approach that feats the core mission and principle of the organization, I think the most primary importance on that. So
Yeah. Is there maybe one thing that as you look forward and you've, started to learn more about Genesis and think about the future, is there one thing that you kind of look forward to that gives you hope or, gives you a picture?
that's a good question, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's housing is kind of funny because there's a kind of exploratory process to identifying new potential developments as they come up. Where
Sure.
you might be looking at 5 or 6 things at once, and maybe one or two of them actually pan out in anything. And honestly, that's probably an exaggeration of what the success rate can actually be. It's kind of like a sales thing. Or if 1 out of 10 works out, or 3 out of 10 works out, you're probably doing your job right. But I've always looked at that growth curve. So long as that growth is mission focused growth and not just growth for the sake of growth.
Yeah.
I've always looked at that potential growth curve as something that's very exciting. So I think maybe if I had one thing I could choose from, it would just be, where will we be in 5 years, and what will we still be? Where will my staff be in 5 years? It's a big question when you I had an interview with somebody just a couple of years ago about something. You just called me in the blue, and so I sat down. You asked me that question, and like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm kind of going like, I have family and kids. This is where I'm going to be in 5 years. So it can be a question that is sometimes meant as like trying to gauge somebody's, what's the word? Like drive or ambition, like your personal ambition on what you want to achieve and that kind of thing. But I think when you're just trying to guide an organization that has such good history, that's had such great people leading it over the years, and such great people on the board assisting in that leadership, it's really just from a stewardship perspective, are we still going to be in a place 5 years from now where we're in a position where we can thrive as an organization, where our residents, who some people have moved into our apartments, are still there, and they've been there since they opened. Can we still be providing that quality of housing down the road? And then what can we do to make sure that can happen?
Yeah, big mission, big purpose. That's got to be exciting to be part of that.
There's a reason, Rhoda, when you invited me to sit down here, I was given like a list of dates, and I chose the last one on the list. Because it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I think, after I started. I was like, I look around like, I don't know yet. So, and then, a year from now, there will be things that I have learned, there'll be mistakes that I've made, and there'll be things that have happened that, it seems like we just need to pivot from one crisis into another on a national level, and it is just exhausting. And I think trying to make sure we can react and insulate ourselves from the worst of it as best we can, without becoming completely risk averse and afraid of making any impact, is always, that's an interesting point to be in.
It's interesting as you talk about the ability to pivot. And it does seem like that's become more a part of leadership, more a part of pretty much any professional's life. I heard someone once recently say that what used to take 10 years to change, we're now doing in a year. So if you think about the rate at which significant major changes are happening, are there tips that you use to maybe help your team through those pivots? It's one thing for us to do that personally as leaders, but then as we're guiding our team, sometimes that's a whole nother challenge. And so I'm curious if you have some tips that have helped you guide your team through that.
I think it's trying to be as prepared and aware of what resources are out there as you possibly can. I know my staff. We have multiple. If it's a membership at at another organization that provides some kind of training, or some other organization that like CEDM is a big one for this. Where you'll get it's a national nonprofit that will provide updates and information to or to member organizations about upcoming changes or policy or something like that. There are a number of groups that do this kind of thing, and I think it's trying to be aware of what resources are out there that will give you this new information that comes out. Because you know, with that increase in speed that you mentioned, also comes complexity.
Yes.
The application process for low-income housing tax credit used to be a pretty simple thing when at its inception in the 80s, but as speed of communication has grown, you see the complexity grow as well.
Sure.
You know, well, now you need 30 or 40 things, whether before it was like 10, you know? And sometimes there's a good reason for that, but I think in general, as our speed of communication increases, the level of complexity comes with that almost rises in tandem. So it's understanding how to work through those changes as they come up, and just how does this really impact us? Yeah. You know, and be mindful. I think it's really easy to look down these kind of roads and feel pressure and feel a little bit of fear, and I think that's a healthy thing. You know, if you have that sensation in your stomach, like it can be a little bit of self-awareness that can help. And in this world, it's something where, like, if you weren't feeling that, I'd be more concerned about it than if you were, you know?
Right.
So it's just, but it's also trying to be optimistic and just understand that no one has to do this by themselves, you know, or shouldn't anyway. Yeah. You know, we should all have people that we can look to for guidance or just to bounce ideas off of, or just to admit that this is terrible. But sometimes it's the situation that we're in. So, I mean, right now we see funding sources besieged by different philosophies or ideals that just don't align with what the basic needs are for people we're supposed to be stewards of. Right. You know, and that can be tough. But just there's always an ebb and flow to so much that we experience in life. It's just trying to be mindful and open to those changes as they come, and react as we need to. So
I always say, you know, even in the midst of challenges, there are always opportunities that emerge. And so while we wouldn't necessarily ask for the challenges, they can be good in helping us reshape how we respond, how we see new opportunities to maybe serve in new ways. Right?
Yes, right.
And so keeping that in mind sometimes, I think, helps us not panic quite so much in the midst of some of those challenges, even though that's tempting.
And I understand panic. Yeah. I mean, that's a natural, it's a human instinct that is born in a healthy survival skill. It's challenging sometimes, though, because the way we react around others can either add fuel to the fire or help provide calm. And I think that's something I'm still trying to understand better in a leadership role. You know, I find myself, I'll say something out loud, I'll immediately like, oh wait, no, that's like, you have to watch your words much more carefully than if you're in more of a middle management position or otherwise, just because people look at you as, you know. So there is a meaningfulness in how you have to approach certain things sometimes, I think, and it just takes a little bit of additional, like, just mental training, I think, as time goes by. Yeah. So.
Just I think people, as you said so well, you know, do listen closely to what we say, how we say it, how we act out and implement things that we talk about. You know, there are a lot of ways in which we set the pace. And so leadership is one of those challenging areas, but it can be so rewarding at the same time. Yeah, yes. But very stretching. So, yeah, for sure. Well, Chris, it's been great being able to talk with you about Genesis nonprofit housing and also about leadership. If someone's interested in knowing more, maybe they want to volunteer or donate or become involved in some way, how would they reach out to you?
I think the best way would just be through our website, which is just Genesis NPHC, that's Nonprofit Housing Corporation, .org. that'd be a great place to start. And we have different contact information there and
Yeah.
different, profiles about our different properties and how to
Right.
apply for housing, and that'd be a
Yeah.
good place to go. But thanks for having me. This has been a really great conversation. I appreciate the time.
You are very welcome. And to our listeners, we hope they will reach out and learn more, because you're a fantastic organization that's doing great work in West Michigan. So thank
Thanks,
you.